Tommy.
We are on page 452. Can you open the back blind for me there, please? Thank you.
One day in anatomy, Mr. Willis was teaching the class about the respiratory system.
Kate.
All right. Page 453. 452. All right, here, it's my turn. 452 and 453. Those pages talk about how you breathe. Breathing is controlled by a muscular band of tissue called the diaphragm. Right here, it's an organ that when it contracts, it moves downward. So there we see the diaphragm. It's this long, thin muscle that goes all the way across your body. And when it contracts, it gets shorter, and when it gets shorter, it moves downward. And so to take a breath inward, your brain sends a message to your diaphragm. As a matter of fact, it's your medulla oblongata. Remember that part of your brain? It sends a message to your diaphragm and tells it to contract, and the diaphragm moves down. And when the diaphragm moves down, that leaves more space for the lungs to expand. And the lungs will expand and fill that space because of the lower pressure. And now air will come in to fill the lungs. Because, I don't know if you've ever heard the saying, nature abhors a vacuum, which means nature doesn't like where there's nothing. So something will always fill any left open space. So when the lungs expand, because the diaphragm moves down, the air has to be pulled inward to fill the lungs.
You're going to make a test.
Which test?
26 and 27.
26 and 27? What?
Kate, have I ever complimented your cute freckles? You're welcome.
This says 28, 29.
Perfect.
Well, all right. Back up here. Sorry about that interruption. That was
Very rude.
very rude.
Didn't even knock.
Authority said something, but nature, what about you?
Abhors. That means doesn't like. Yeah. There are also some other muscles involved in breathing. There are muscles of the ribs called the external intercostal muscles. If you've ever eaten ribs, you're eating these muscles from a cow or a pig or something.
They taste delicious.
And these muscles, when they contract, they pull the ribs upward. And that makes more space for the lungs to expand. As the ribs come up, the lungs can expand outward, and you can pull even more air in. And that's not the only set of muscles. The Pectoralis Minor is this muscle right here that attaches the ribs to the clavicle, and that pulls upward. And there's another muscle here, the sternocleidomastoid, that pulls upward. So there's a lot of muscles that pull the ribs up and out, as well as pulling the diaphragm down. Now, during normal breathing, you're not really pulling your ribs up and out. You're not doing all that work. But during heavy breathing, when you need a lot of oxygen, those muscles will work to really expand the rib cage.
So
Go ahead.
The gray arrow that's a different part of.
The gray arrow is the diaphragm, which is moving down. And they drew it in gray there because it's behind everything else.
Would that be moving at the same time then?
Yes, that diaphragm goes down, and these external intercostals pull the ribs up. So that at the same time. expand the chest cavity. Now, if you're going to breathe out, you can just let that diaphragm relax, and the diaphragm will go back up to its normal state. And that's when you breathe out. But if you want to breathe out even further than that, you can do a couple other things. You have the posterior intercostal muscles, which are also attached to the ribs, that will pull the ribs down in the opposite direction. And you also have your abdominal wall muscles. If you contract your abdomen, if you really want to breathe out hard, do it. Breathe out as much as you can. You can feel your abdomen contracting right there. And so you contract your abdomens, that's that arrow going in. Your internal intercostal muscles pull and contract and pull the ribs down, and your diaphragm goes back up, and all of that will make you breathe out as much as possible. So, your diaphragm's the main one that does the breathing, but these other muscles help. And today what we're going to do in our little lab is we're going to figure out your respiratory volumes and capacities. That's what this lab is over. Now let me try and explain this graph to you. It's on the back of the handout I gave you. We have names for all the different volumes and capacities of breathing. For example, the tidal volume. That's the volume of air that's normally pulled in and out of your lungs with every normal breath. You're sitting there in your chair right now, and this line means breathe in, breathe out, breathe in, breathe out, breathe in, breathe out. This is a graph of how much air there is in your lungs. And when you breathe in, you take in about 500 milliliters of air. That's about half a liter. You can see this is in lung volume in milliliters. So as you breathe in and out, about half a liter of air is going in and out of your lungs. Now, if you breathe out as much as you can, do it right now with me. Take a normal breath in, and then breathe out as hard as you can. Do it, use your abs. Really push it out. It was exciting, wasn't it? What happened there as you were doing that, you were breathing out, and you breathed out an extra volume of air lower than you normally breathe out. That's why this line goes down. We call that the expiratory reserve volume. That's the extra volume of air you just breathed out, extra to the normal amount of air you normally breathe out. So this line going down is the normal amount of air you normally breathe out. And then there's an extra bit you just breathed out when I made you try to do that. And usually the expiratory reserve volume is about 1,000 milliliters, about a liter. If it's more, it would go down even further. And it is more for some people. Some people can breathe out even more than the next guy. Now, there's always a bit of air in your lungs that you can't breathe out. We call that the residual volume. And you can't get rid of your residual volume in your lungs no matter what you do. That's extra air in your lungs that just stays in there. And if you ever ran out of air for any reason, your body could still continue to work for a while off the residual volume of air that's in your lungs until it all gets used up, and then you'll die.
Blech.
So there's a residual volume. We are not going to be able to measure in the lab the residual volume. So we're just going to assume for everybody that it's 1,200 milliliters. Write that down somewhere. The residual air volume we're assuming is 1,200 milliliters.
Paper on my desk.
There's no way for us to measure it.
really isn't.
We're going to be able to measure all the rest of these stuff.
Like you want other probable.
What did you say it was?
The
12,000?
residual volume, we'll just say is 1,200 milliliters.
What's the difference between a capital L and a
I
little
know.
The L is for liters, and liter is always capital. M is milli.
I just want to figure out what it is.
Where? Oh, there is no difference. On your sheet it says ml lowercase. Nah, it's the same thing.
What?
All right. The faster we get through this, the faster we can get to the lab. So, your tidal volume is the normal amount of air that goes in and out of your lungs. Your expiratory reserve volume is the extra air that you can breathe out if you have to. And then there's this volume way up here called the inspiratory reserve volume. That's the extra amount of air you can take in above what you normally breathe in. So to figure that out, you take your normal breath in. Everybody be breathing there. Take your normal breath in. And now above that, breathe in extra as much as you can. Your chest should go way up. How much air was that you just sucked in? Well, for most people, it's about 2.5 liters. I'm kind of dizzy. And that's your inspiratory reserve volume. You'll be able to measure that too. So those are all the volumes. Inspiratory reserve volume, tidal volume, expiratory reserve volume, and residual volume. If you add them all together, you get the total lung capacity.
Yeah.
That's all of them added together. The vital capacity is just the top three. Inspiratory reserve, tidal, and expiratory reserve all added together. You throw out the residual volume when you're talking about the vital capacity.
So how do you find your expiratory?
You breathe out.
Expiratory reserve volume, that's breathing out below what you normally breathe out.
So trying to breathe out more? Or
Yeah,
less?
breathe out as much as you can. That'll give you your expiratory reserve volume. The inspiratory capacity, you can see what it is here. It's your tidal volume, what you normally breathe in and out, plus your inspiratory reserve volume. The inspiratory capacity is everything that you can breathe in after you exhale a normal breath. And then the functional residual capacity is everything that's left in the lungs after you breathe out a normal breath. So it's good to keep this graph handy so you can see what they're talking about when you're trying to figure out your capacities. We have a machine in there that helps you measure your capacities by breathing into the machine. And you'll mark it down and you'll use the graph and the chart to figure out what all of your things are. Yes?
So, volume,
Residual volume is what's left in your lungs after you breathe out as much as you can possibly breathe out.
and then the expiratory is just how much you can breathe out afterwards.
Expiratory reserve volume is how much you can breathe out after you've already breathed out a
And
normal
then the
breath.
leftover will be
The leftover is residual. Let me come show you how to do these measurements, and then you'll do them.